right, adventurers. The worlds that we craft for our players would be nothing but boring, barren wastelands if it wasn't for the people, the NPCs that we have in them for our players to interact with. But how do we bring life and creation to the NPCs of which we put in front of our players? Well, hopefully this video will be able to help you out on that. So let's get into this. So yes, it is I, Nathaniel Gomezian, shopkeeper and proprietor of Gaming Treasure Chest. As I said, in today's video, it's going to be all about going through NPCs and hopefully giving you some advice, be you a new DM or an old DM. Hopefully there's something in there that can help you out in terms of creating NPCs and being able to sometimes throw them in on the fly, or obviously creating the ones which are more complex. And that is because NPCs can basically be split into minor NPCs, so the ones which you do have to make up on the fly, random guards, shopkeepers, whatever, and your major NPCs, so obviously the villain, the people that is important that your players meet along the way to help them or hinder them potentially kind of thing. So there's a difference between the two, and we're going to quickly go over minor NPC creation because this is something that can be very helpful, especially for new DMs in terms of being able to do this on the fly. So number one, what I'm going to say here is that minor NPCs, although are not critical to the story, they are the things that get thrown in there. I said if a guard is escorting them somewhere and then they go, oh, what's their name? Or like I said, a shopkeep, if they want to find out more details about them. A minor NPC can become a major NPC depending on what the player's interactions with them, because all the NPCs, any NPC you make, their importance comes down to how much the players interact or want to invest in them. You could make a really detailed, a major NPC, but when the players actually come and interact with them, maybe they don't care for them, don't like them, and go, oh, we're never going to meet that guy again because we don't want to. He might appear in the story later on, but the players might not want to deal with them. So sometimes it is important to realise that even though I'm telling you information for quick things to make minor NPCs, they can become major NPCs at the same point. So here's some basic advice. With the minor NPCs, I would massively recommend having a piece of paper in your notes where you have written fantasy names, different names whereby you haven't assigned them to anything, but they are quick references that you can go to in terms of when your players go, oh, what's this person's name? Or what's this barkeep's name? What's this whoever random man in the corner's name? You have a list of names already prepared rather than panicking, because I do know from personal experience that panicking can make, oh, Tim, I don't know.
By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
And while it's fine to have names like that and can actually become a little bit of a joke, and potentially stupid names like that and quickly coming on the fly does make your players focus more in on them, Boblin the Goblin or whoever the hell. But having names written down that go with the setting and feel that you're going for can be unbelievably helpful. As I said, so basically just to be able to, on the fly, go through your list and say, oh yeah, this is their name kind of thing. I would also recommend when it comes to minor NPCs, you want to go with their name, their race, because it can be sometimes really hard to sometimes on the fly be oh, what are they, a human, dragonborn, elf, whatever. Having a name, a race, and a brief description of what they look like. Are they a peasant, a noble, are they armored, a kind of an adventurer kind of thing, or something along those lines. A basic description of what they look like can also be very helpful. Yet again, you don't have to go into crazy detail. That is more for the major NPCs that you want to focus in on the details of how they look and whatnot. But having things like that can really help. Another thing which isn't 100% crucial for the minor NPCs, but definitely is something that you should throw in to the minor NPC creation, is little quirks. Something that makes that character unique. Is it the fact that they are a very eccentric and fast moving and continuously flailing their hands all over the place? Or are they a bit more sterner, controlled? Maybe they've got a limp, maybe they've got a scar on their face, something along those lines, something which gives some kind of interest and differentiates them from the other NPCs which the party have met. Obviously, you can throw in silly voices and whatnot if you want, but voices and that are not critical. You can do that, and obviously, if you do give NPCs, now this is also going with the minor NPCs and the major NPCs voices, writing down somewhere what their voice sounds like so that you know that if that character comes back, especially if it is sessions and sessions down the line, knowing a little rough note of they sound a little bit like a southern gent, something along those kind of lines that lets you know, right, this is something that the players are definitely going to remember, and therefore I need to make sure that I have that note put in. So that's something as well to note down, that if you do voices, as I said, voices, people go backwards and forwards with this. I do know that some people find voices hard, so it's not a definite critical thing that you need. You can actually change up what a character is like with your voice depending on whether or not you decide to talk more slowly and more controlled, or if you decide to go very fast and eccentric. There is different ways that you can change a voice without having to change it, like, you know, with accents and whatnot. You can, like, definitely play around with your voices and that. And I would strongly recommend for DMs to try and work out what you can do with your voice, just because that can be fun, like, to add to the game. But you don't have to, it's not a necessity. Another thing when it comes to the minor NPCs is, yet again, not something that you need to have for like every single one, but having a basic, like, you know, secret or storyline, having like some little ones here and there that yet again you've got jotted down, like the names that you can quickly latch onto, is a great idea. Because if the players do decide to invest their time and effort into this minor NPC, having something that's already yet again backed up that you've already come up with is amazing to flow with. Now admittedly, I said if you can come up with things on the fly, that's perfectly fine as well. For example, in one of my games, when I was describing the scenery of this town, I described that there was a homeless person on the streets. Now, this was more to kind of describe that this town is like, you know, a more down and out, like, you know, it's not the high society kind of thing, like, you know, that probably would have had guards removing vagrants and whatnot from the street. This is a more kind of like slum kind of aspect. That was more what I was focused on. But they decided to go and speak to the homeless person. They were like, what happened to you? Why were you homeless? Now, admittedly, I had to come up with this very quickly, and having a plan that I'd already kind of written down, not specifically for this person, but as of like a kind of NPC story plot hook kind of thing, was very helpful. So I basically then saying that the reason that they were homeless was because they were kicked out of running the orphanage that they did, and that they are trying to gain money. They are basically begging for money on the street to hire an adventure team to be able to go save the orphans, because basically it's been taken over by a corporation who basically has taken over and converted the orphanage into a sweatshop, getting the orphans to manufacture goods for sale. And obviously this person wanted to gain enough money because they knew what was going on, but basically they didn't have the power. They were just basically like a kind of teacher, father kind of figure who was trying to help the orphans, and like I said, got kicked out because they couldn't pay the bills, blah 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 blah. Companies come in, made the orphans practically slaves, and so they are trying to hire an adventuring team to be able to deal with the situation and that. And so having something like that, like giving an investment hooks like that, like little secrets, as I said, you don't need to have it for every single one of them, but if the players decide to invest, having ones on the fly, yet again like the names, very helpful. So that's what I recommend. But enough about the minor NPCs. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, the major NPCs that you create for your party, in terms of the fact, we're talking about the villains, we're talking about people that your party meet along the way to either help or hinder them massively kind of thing. You're putting these people in the party's way, and then obviously what happens with interactions and that decides what happens in the game. But when it comes to these ones, yet again, obviously you want to flesh out their name. You want to have a detailed description of them. Definitely some kind of quirk, because these ones you do want to make memorable. You also want them to potentially, with these ones, have secrets, because these ones are going to be more interesting, because are they actually helping the party because they want to? Are they making it look like they're helping the party by actually being coerced in some way to sabotage them? Different things like that, like secrets, and yet again, you can go more crazy with secrets. Are they secretly a werewolf and haven't been telling people? Or have they been embezzling money? Secrets don't always have to be negative things. They could potentially be that maybe they've got a younger sister or daughter or something along those lines that they're trying to protect, and so therefore sheltering them by hiding their existence. Different things like that can make for great things that the players could potentially find out about, little hints and that get left along the way. So having secrets for major NPCs is an amazing thing. Now, another really important thing when it comes to producing your major NPC is thinking, what is their purpose as an NPC? Because are you putting them in front of the players to send them off on a quest line, or are you putting them in front of the players to give them information? Are you putting them in front of your players to help them or hinder them? Their purpose as to why you as a DM are putting them narratively into the story is a very important thing to think about and is something you need to do when creating your NPCs. The next very important question to ask with these major NPCs is, what are their motivations? What do they want? What don't they want? These are very important things to think about because that goes with how you play them. Are they doing whatever they can to achieve power, or are they doing whatever it is their motivation is because they want peace in the world? And then whatever happens in terms of whichever way the players decide to interact with them, is it actually working towards their motivations as to what they want, or is it not? Because obviously, if it's not what they want, they're going to be acting very negatively towards the party, and if it is what they do want, then they'll be working very positively towards the party. So things like that are very important. Think about what their motivations are, and then with every interaction, lean into what that is, because that just helps you be able to, when it comes to role play, decide which way this kind of character is going to swing. Now, obviously, as I said, when it comes to your villain, their motivations can be like, you know, a little bit maybe skewed in terms of like, let's think like a Thanos. His whole thing is that he wants to wipe out half the population, but in his mind it's rational because there's not enough resources to go around. So that's what I mean. When it comes to motivations, it doesn't always have to be sane motivations in terms of like, you know, for the thinking about everyone else. These can be very selfish motivations. And of course, remember that motivations don't always have to be for bad, evil stuff, because as I said, not only are you the villains and like, you know, the bad people that your party meet along the way, but you're also the good people and the potential allies they can make on their journey. That's just the whole thing about being a DM. You are both good and evil. You're not rooting for the players or rooting 100% against them. You are kind of a neutral within the storytelling environment that the game of D&D is. And obviously, I said the story is made by the players, and so you are the good and the bad, helping them and hindering them. So the motivations aren't always going to be like for power. Like, you know, it could be, as I said, that they just want peace in the world. It could be that they do have that motivation to help the players because they want to bring down the big bad just as much as the players, and though they're not maybe strong enough to helping the combat, they can help out in other means. So motivations don't always have to be bad, because when it comes to people in life, it's not just black and white. There is grey areas, and especially when it comes to your parties, I'm sure that when they do their actions, sometimes they might accidentally kill somebody along the way. So your party might not actually be like, you know, the great good they portray themselves to be. There could be skeletons in the closet and such like that. So there are grey areas, and that's what makes people people and makes your characters that you're creating more realistic. And that in turn makes your world more realistic and memorable. That's why it's very important to do this for your players. And the last but still very important thing to think about when creating your major NPCs is, how are you going to introduce them to the party? Because how you introduce them sets up how your party is going to think about them. Because, you know, they say like first impressions and that we make on people can massively sway our opinion on them. So when the party meets them, are they doing something like kind and nice and generous, or are they doing something which makes them seem like a bastard? Are they maybe, if the party meets them on the street, giving some coin to some homeless people, or are they kicking them and shooing them and trying to get them off the street? The different ways that you can go about it. So there's multitudes of different, obviously, gestures that are nice and gestures that are slightly more bastardish, can massively set up what you want your players to think about this character before even speaking to them. Obviously, when it comes to their speech, they can be very flippant and insulting if you want to go down that route of maybe wanting the party to hate them. But obviously you can go down the more nicer route of them being very helpful to the party if you want your players to like them. But as I said, actually giving actions as to how they're introduced, very nice as well, to be able to lull your party into a thought that you kind of want them to have. But as I said, when it comes to NPCs in general, I will say that you will come up with things where you want the players to think a certain way, and you introduce them thinking that you've done it perfectly, and the players go completely different than what you think. It is one of those things that's very important to note as a dungeon master, that sometimes the players, the story goes with the players, and so you might massively think that this is going to be an important NPC, and then it turns out, as I said, that one of the minor ones becomes more important. So you do need to be flexible, and you do need to think about maybe sometimes if there's an important piece of information that an NPC is supposed to give them, and you've given it this very specific NPC, that maybe somehow one of the other NPCs that they have become more attached to has that information, and in some way, story-wise, make it work and they give it to them. Because, as I said, it goes with what the party wants. And it's very important to always remember that they are helping you craft the story as well. So don't be so massively fixed on this NPC has to be the one who does this. Sometimes you just need to have the concept and find a way to roll it into whoever the party decide to interact with. And of course, if you just want to make a lovable NPC that your party is gonna always want to go to, then there's nothing wrong with throwing in stupid, crazy things like, say a goblin who's got a pirate's hat on called Scoomscosh. Stupid things like that is probably more what your party is going to latch onto. So as I said, adding quirks and that is very important, but as I said, that was a previous point. Now I will admit, although mentioning villain NPCs, I haven't really got into too much detail on crafting them, and that's because I've already made that video that is here and will be pinned and in the description down below, which goes full focus on just creating a villain NPC. So I don't really want to go back over the information again because you can find it there, and that's much more focused on a villain rather than general NPC stuff. Anyway, that's the advice I have for you when creating NPCs. I hope that you have found any of this information helpful. If there's any other kind of things that you think about when creating NPCs that I've not mentioned in here, please put it down in the comment section down below to be able to help other people discover that information, and potentially I might end up putting it into another video if it's really great information, because I am not all-knowing. I never pretend to be all-knowing. I am an idiot as well, but I have tried to make these videos to try to help new DMs and old DMs as well, potentially if they want that kind of advice. So I hope that you found this helpful, and if you did, then why not consider hitting that subscribe button, liking and such like that, because I make D&D videos every week, and if you like this one, you'll probably like the other stuff that I make. There is also the Discord channel down below. It's not 100% alive at this moment in time, alive and kicking, but we can bring life back into it, and I hope to make a lovely community of people who love Dungeons and Dragons and can talk to each other, creating puzzles, creating ideas, when it comes to campaigns and such like that. I would love to create a space like that and build a lovely community. So if you want to be part of that, please consider that. Also, if you want to help the channel financially, there is the Patreon down below. There is a bunch of resources. You don't even have to pay. There's a lot of free resources that have been done in previous videos in terms of you just need to join as a free member to gain access to that. There is also paid membership where there are free STLs, and I will continuously be adding to those. So if you've got the money and want to support the channel, then there are things there that you can gain access to, as well as obviously if you do have the money and want to buy a gift for somebody round the table, your DM players, somebody who just loves D&D in your life, then why not visit the Etsy store of Gaming Treasure Chest. All the things on there are things that I have designed personally and will 3D print and send to you. So even if you don't buy something, why not consider just checking it out to see what you think about the shop, because I put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into it, and yeah, I will continuously try to create more and more fun items. But anyway, hope that you enjoyed this video, and until next time, goodbye!